Swadhyayabhyasanam chaiva vanamayatamuchyate. The austerity of speech. And I'm not going to speak exactly about that verse, but since a number of years I'd been examining this verse, and like I was telling one friend a few months back, I find it to be like a wish-fulfilling cow. Like every time you look at it, you see it from a different angle of vision. So I want to sort of continue that presentation from earlier this year, but from a different angle, by looking at a cautionary tale, a cautionary incident that we find in the Ramayana. There's two verses that sort of reveal the depth of the Ramayana, and these two verses are glorifying the speaker of the Ramayana, Valmiki Muni. They're sort of like pranam verses to him, but they reveal also what we can hope to expect by looking at the pastimes of Lord Ram within the Ramayana. So what are these verses? The first verse is Kujantam Rama Ramiti Maduram Maduraksharam Aruhya Kavita Shakam Vande Valmiki Kokilam. So the verse is glorifying Valmiki Muni. And what is the verse comparing Valmiki Muni to? That Kujantam Rama Ramiti, that there's an especially beautifully sounding bird who is singing very sweetly, Maduram Maduraksharam. And this bird is sitting on the tree, on the particular branch that is resplendent with the most beautiful poetry. Maduram Maduraksharam, Aruhya Kavita Shakam. And that bird is singing very sweetly, like a cuckoo bird. Like oftentimes when hearing about Krishna Lila, you often hear, the gopis, their voices are sweet like a cuckoo bird, like that, a kokila. So here, Valmiki is being described as a kokila bird who is singing a very sweet song on an especially beautiful branch of literature, of the tree of literature known as poetry, kavita. And what is the song he is singing? Kujantam Ram, Rama Ramiti. He's singing the glories and the name of Lord Ram. And when one hears that, it is very attractive. Just like even when we hear, like sometimes when we wake up in the morning, one of the things I look forward to most, like when I wake up early in the morning, is not hearing the call of the rooster, but to hear the bird songs. When you're walking out in nature, just to hear the sweetness of a bird singing, it is something that's very soothing, something that's very relaxing. So Valmiki Muni, he is singing the name of Ram, and it is beautiful to hear. It soothes the soul, it enlivens the heart. But the next verse is described in a different way. So the first verse is described, Kujantam Rama Ramiti Maduram Maduraksha Aruhya Kavita Shakam Vande Valmiki Kokilam, as a very sweet singing bird. In the very next verse is described, Valmiki Munisinghasya Kavita Vanacharanaha Shrinvan Ramakata Nadam Konayati Paramgatyam. So the first verse is described as Kokila. The next verse as Valmiki Munisinghasya. He's like a lion. He's like a lion. who is roaring. Kavita vanacharanaha. What is he roaring? Shrinvan Rama Katha Nadam. Very loudly. What does he roar? The pastimes of Lord Ram. Konayati Paramgatim. And this can give one supreme happiness and entrance into the supreme abode. The roaring of Valmiki Muni. So Acharyas, in commenting on this, they present the question: where will you find that a bird can roar like a lion? Normally if you hear a bird singing very sweetly, you want to approach it. You want to go closer. But if you hear a lion roaring very loudly, it is said that the frequency with which a lion roars could be heard from miles away. Like a low rumble. Sometimes if you hear like a deep bass, a good low frequency, you feel it in your belly. You know what I mean? Like you feel it. Like you could feel the roar of a lion from miles away because of the frequency. And when you hear that roar, you feel it coming from this direction, you very quickly go in the next direction. So how is it that this Valmiki is being described as, on one hand, a very sweet sounding cuckoo bird, on the other hand, he's being described as a roaring lion? The same person, doing the same thing. Kujantam Rama Rameti and Rama Kathanadam, glorifying the name and pastimes of Ram. How is it that one is very sweet, like the sound of a bird, but the other is very ferocious, like the sound of a lion? Acharya's comment. And it is true, like I have this experience, when you listen to the pastimes of Lord Ram, whether it be the verses of Valmiki composed in the Sanskrit language in the Ramayana itself, or whether it be the work of Tulsidas composed in the Ramcharitmanas, not in Hindi, but actually the language of Ramcharitmanas is Awadhi, which is a dialect of Hindi spoken in Ayodhya. It's not Hindi as people sometimes say, it's a dialect called Awadhi, which Tulsidas writes as Ramcharitmanas. When you listen to it, literally I had this, it could bring tears to your eyes. When you hear how the beautiful pastimes of Lord Ram, and even in, I don't know about Guyana, but in Trinidad, Ramayana is more, especially Ramcharitmanas. I can guarantee you, every single day in Trinidad, in some place, there's some Ramayana Katha going on. Every single day. Whether it be some small group or some big, Kathaka being broadcast on the radio, on TV or something. There's something. And what people look forward to the most? When they would sing the shlokas of the Ramcharitmanas. There is something to it. There's some culture, there's some history, and there's some substance there. Even in the 6th canto of Bhagavatam, in the discussion between the Vishnu Dutas and the Yam Dutas, the Vishnu Dutas quote one verse, and they say, even if the holy name of the Lord is chanted for musical entertainment, there's benefit, known as Namabhas. There's benefit if done innocently. Some years ago, one very famous soca singer in Trinidad, Marshall Montano, he sang a song, you could find it on YouTube, about a DJ from India whose name was Hari Krishna. A very catchy song. Very catchy song. I listened to it a few times. It came out maybe in the 90s or something, early 2000s. And when this came out in Trinidad, it caused a sensation. That how is it that the news people always looking for something to stir up some controversy, to get some clicks, to sell some newspapers, to get some eyes to look at them on TV. So they caught up on this one. So they called the main Hindu organization in Trinidad, It's called the Sanatan Dharma Mahasabha. So they called the leader of that, and they said, this soca singer singing Hare Krishna in a soca song. What you all have to say about that? They say, so the leader of that organization at the time, they said, we're not touching that one. Let the Hare Krishnas deal with that. Let the Hare Krishnas deal with that one. So they called the devotees up at the time. It was maybe in the late 90s, maybe. So they called the devotees up, and Rajarshi took the thing and he went on TV along with one other devotee. And when he went on the TV, like they asked him, what do you think about this? He said, well, listen, we don't agree with anything that goes on in Carnival. Whether it be the nakedness, whether it be the activities that they go on, the consumption of alcohol. We don't agree with anything of that. But the one good thing we see this man is doing is chanting the name of the Lord. So we can't fault him for that. So then the other devotee who went with him, he took the opposite side. About lip touched by the milk touched by the lips of a serpent, and Sarvojishta Payoyata, that becomes poison and all this thing. So Raj quoted this verse, like from Bhagavatam says it. So nobody's making it up. Even if sung for musical entertainment, it still has benefit. The chanting of the holy name, it is so powerful. So the soca artist's mother called in and said, we really appreciate what the words this gentleman is expressing here. Really appreciate that. So this was in Port of Spain. So when Raj was driving out of the city, this sort of, derelict looking man rode up next to his car on a bicycle and knocked on the window. And Raj was startled. He looked at him. Oh, what's that? Rolled the window down. And he looked in the window. He said, you was the man who was just on TV? And he said, yes. He said, I like how you handle them. So then, the particular devotee went to Rajarshi, didn't to agree with, the musical thing and entertainment and all these things. So there was a program, and His Grace Virabahu Prabhu was, and he was just there in transit to catch a flight, maybe to come to Guyana. He was leaving from Guyana to go back to the US. So he had a short layover in Trinidad. So they took him to a program. And when they took him to the program, they asked the same question about the soca artist singing the name of Krishna in the soca song. So Virabahu, and anybody who knows Virabahu Prabhu, like sometimes you ask him a question, and Vrindavan would always tell me these stories. He would say, you have Bhagavatam available here? Okay, turn to this canto, this chapter, this verse, read that purport, you'll find your answer. It's true, right? He would do that sometimes, right? So he did that in Trinidad. So what he called 6th canto, 2nd chapter, such and such verse. Read it. He had the devotee read it. Even if the name of the Lord is sung for musical entertainment, the same thing. It still has benefit. I don't know whether he accepted it. So in the same way, whether people chant the name of Ram for musical entertainment, or whether for whatever reason they chant it, it is sweet, else they wouldn't chant it. Therefore, kujantam Rama Rameti Maduram Maduraksharam. The sweetness of the name of the Lord cannot be stopped. It is attractive. And therefore, when you look at the pages of the Ramayana, it's very attractive when you hear the narrations of the Lord. Very sweet. You could just listen. You could just listen. And especially, I am fond, like in Trinidad, there's these older tunes that they used to sing the Ramayana in. Like one of the famous pundits who made Ramayana, Ramcharitmanas narration popular in Trinidad, was an old pundit called Nirmal. Some of you may still find some of his recordings on YouTube. Old recordings. And one of the tunes we used to like to sing was called the Nirmal tune. And there were these old tunes that conveyed something. When you heard Ramayana and that, especially the classical style drumming and so on, You cannot help but be moved when you hear it being sung. But on the other side of it, so there's the sweet side of it, but what is the roaring of the lion side of it? Valmiki Muni Singhasya. The sweetness is one thing, but when we understand the depth of meaning of what is being sung in the narration of the Ramayana, then just as when the lion roars, all animals who want to oppose flee in fear. All misgivings, misconceptions that we may hold in our hearts also flee in fear. So the pastimes of Lord Ram are such that they're very sweet to listen to, but when spoken in the right mood and heard in the right mood, whatever misconceptions we have become shaken at their very core by these transcendental vibrations. So therefore, Valmiki Muni is both a very sweet sounding bird, but when we understand the depth of the meaning, it can trigger within us a revolution in our lives that drives us towards perfection. Param Gati. So as I mentioned earlier, I wanted to sort of continue from the trend I was on when I spoke on the austerity of speech earlier this year when I visited. And I mentioned I would give a cautionary tale that is described in the Ramayana. And for the most part, everybody knows this pastime. You know, like any casual person, they would know this. And what is that pastime? That is the conversation between Kaikeyi and Manthara. A very, very pivotal conversation that takes place in the Ramayana. Kaikeyi, she was the youngest of Dasharath's queens, mother of Bharat. And Dasharath, he went practically speaking for 60,000 years before he was blessed to have sons by the performance of the Yajna. He had 4 sons: Ram, Lakshman, Bharat, and Shatrughna. 60,000 years. Waited. I can't say patiently, but he waited for sons. And finally, when he was blessed with sons, and he was seeing them growing up, they were being trained nicely, he began to see some negative omens abounding in the atmosphere, in the interactions of people. He began to feel certain things in his body, and he felt that something is not right. Something is not right. I have to make some important decisions. At that time, when he felt this way, Bharat was out of the station. He had gone to his, I think, his grandparents' home for some time, so he was not there. And Dasharath thought that I should not wait. I should immediately crown Ram as the Prince Regent. So as soon as I die, he will become king. It's just a matter of formality. Like sometimes even on the impending death of a parent, they can put things in place such that all property, all what they earn, doesn't have to go through a will. The children's name is already there. As soon as they die and you present the death certificate, it's automatically the children's, without having to go through any kind of formality after of probate and all these things. So something similar Dasharath was intending to do. And he didn't just do it whimsically. He consulted. He consulted with his priest, his chief advisor and spiritual preceptor, Vashishta. And Vashishta confirmed that yes, this is the proper course of action. And he presented this desire to the assembly of sages who would grace his court. And those sages and brahmanas and ministers who were there also agreed. They wholeheartedly agreed. Everybody loved Ram. That immediately, do it. When should I do it? Immediately. It should be done. So preparation started to be made. The announcement was made, news went out, preparations were afoot. That Ram would be crowned as a prince regent. And I find this to be very significant because one of the things we have to come to terms with as individuals is our own mortality. Death can come at any moment. Bhakti Tirth Maharaj, just before he passed away, he made a video, a very, very heart-wrenching video, where he was speaking about the departure of various great devotees in our past. And the title of that video was Die Before Dying. Coming to terms with our own mortality is one of the most difficult thresholds we as individuals have to cross. We always think we have maybe another year, another 5 years, another 10 years. But the reality of it is that death can come at any moment. It's a very difficult lesson to have to swallow. And in most cases, we might be right. We might have some time. In most cases. But in many cases, we didn't have time. Like in Trinidad, which is fast becoming the murder capital of the world, perhaps. It's not an unusual thing for people to just be killed, like just carrying out their business. The other day, a child was hit by a stray bullet because two gangs were fighting out in the streets. Crazy things happen. Crazy things. You look on Facebook and you see things coming up. There's this group in Trinidad who's very expert at finding missing people. And it's alarming how many missing people you see going up. And you know what you never see? Found people. Where you see the same faces coming up because they were found subsequently. Significantly less. It could make you think about life. Coming to terms with our own mortality is one of the most difficult things we have to do. But yet, it is the most essential thing for us to do. The reality of death, of the relinquishing of this body. And Dasharatha, even though he waited 60,000 years for Ram and his other sons, when he saw those signs, he immediately began to put things in place to unburden himself of the trappings of the ruling of the kingdom. It's a very, very valuable lesson. There's a very, very beautiful verse in the Srimad Bhagavatam. Leha patya kalatradeshu atmasainyeshu asatsopi tesham pramato nidhanam pashyan api na pashyati. They see but they do not see. Pashyan api na pashyati. That those persons who are devoid of knowledge of the self, they don't inquire into the problems of life. What are the problems of life? Birth, disease, death, old age. And we continue to remain attached to what this verse calls Asat Sainya. Like Sena, Pandava Sena, the army of the Pandavas. Asat Sainyeshu. So the Asat Sena, that army which is fallible. Fallible soldiers. What are the fallible soldiers? The body, or children, or other family members, even our parents, our wives. And we have the experience that on a long enough timeline, everybody offers obeisances. What does that mean? Everybody falls flat. Everybody dies. My father died before me. His father died before him. Sometimes one father might even have the misfortune of seeing his own son die. And therefore it is imperative that we come to terms with the finite nature of this existence of this body. So this news went out through the length and breadth of Ayodhya, and everybody was in jubilation. Everybody except one person, and those who didn't get the news yet. This news came to one individual by the name of Manthara. Manthara was a hunchback, and admittedly she may not have been so good looking. So, damned on two sides. And on top of that, she probably had a bad attitude as well. So damned on three sides. So she was always made fun of because of her hunchback and different things, and she resented that. But somehow she became close to Kaikeyi and she became her chief attendant. And naturally what happens when you become close to, if you're close to a big person, then what happens? Your size also increases. The more intimately you become connected to a big person, your size increases. So her stock of value increased. So whereas people probably would have laughed at her outrightly before, then all that had to stop because she was closely connected to the queen, Kaikeyi. So maybe they might have laughed, but in private, not out in the open anymore. And she was very resentful of that. She was very bitter about how she was treated, and she never got over it. And sometimes these things are very difficult to get over, admittedly. And she got this news, and she went to Kaikeyi. She said, "Did you hear the news?" Kaikeyi said, "What news? What news are you speaking about?" I said that Dasharath is going to crown Ram as prince. And Kaikeyi she heard this news and she took off a piece of jewelry and she gave it to Manthara. "This is brilliant news. This is happy news." And Manthara was perplexed. She said, "You are certainly most unintelligent. This news will breed the destruction of us, of you and your son. How is it that you are happy getting this terrible news?" I said, "What do you mean? Don't you find it strange Bharat is not here? Why Dasharath is acting so hastily to install Ram? You don't find that at all strange? He has something planned." And Kaikeyi said, "Never. No." I said, "Yes. That there are two possibilities that will take place. Either when Bharat returns, Ram becomes the prince regent. As soon as Bharat returns, or even before he returns, either Ram will send him to another place or send him to another world." What Valmiki is saying is two meanings. Sending to another place means he'll banish him from Ayodhya, because Ram sees Bharat as competition. Send him to another world means he'll have him killed. So she began to feed this type of information into the ear of Kaikeyi. And Kaikeyi continued to listen. And she put up some small protest. Small. But ultimately, she gave a receptive ear to Manthara. So she said that, Bharat could be killed, could be banished from the kingdom. You know what will also happen? Kaushalya, because she is the mother of Ram, she will now become more favored by Dasharath. And what will happen to you? You will be mistreated, Kaikeyi, because Kaikeyi she was the favorite of Dasharath. She was the youngest, she was the most beautiful. You will become mistreated. Kaushalya will extract her revenge now that her son will be in charge. And you will be relegated to an inferior position. What is she saying? If you get relegated to an inferior position, I will be relegated to an inferior position by association. You have to act. So Kaikeyi asked her, what should I do? What should I do? Manthara said, you have to make a preemptive strike. Don't wait for this to happen. And she recalled an incident that happened many, many years ago. And Kaikeyi was skillful. She wasn't an ordinary princess. She said, do you remember when Dashrath was almost mortally wounded on the battlefield? And you drove a chariot very skillfully and were able to rescue him. And out of gratitude, he said that he will offer you 2 boons of your choosing anytime you ask for it. And Kaikeyi said, yes, I remember. Go to him now and ask those 2 boons. What boon should I ask? You should ask him that Bharat should be enthroned, not Ram. And Ram, not that he should be refused or denied the throne, he should be banished from the kingdom for at least 14 years. Why 14 years? Because she felt that that was sufficient time for the citizens of Ayodhya to get over the banishment of Ram. And that was sufficient time for Bharat to win them over to his side. So she was very politically motivated. She had this thing planned out in her mind. And she told this to Kaikeyi. I know what happened. Kaikeyi became convinced. Kaikeyi became convinced. I went to Dashrath and requested the boons. You know what is interesting about this? Manthara went to Kaikeyi, and every single thing Manthara was saying was self-motivated, selfishly motivated, and nothing could be further from the truth. Nothing could be further from the truth. And the problem was that Kaikeyi didn't ask Manthara or didn't make an attempt herself to verify what Manthara was saying. At any point in time, Kaikeyi could have said, okay, I will go to Dashrath and find out this myself. Why will he not wait until Bharat returns? At any point in time, Kaikeyi could have done that. She didn't do it. She gave a receptive ear to the disinformation spewed by Manthara. She accepted it wholeheartedly. At any point in time, Kaikeyi could have said, stop. You are saying this? Let's ask Dashrath. What is his motivation for doing this? At any point in time. But she didn't do it. When disinformation falls on a receptive ear, chaos can ensue. People jump to conclusions without verification of the actual facts. So therefore, when people come to us and they start to speak about someone, they start to speak about a situation, I think I must have mentioned this last time. The first thing, the reflex action in many cases, did you hear about such and such and such? They did such and such and such? True. And that true means, if you understand the tone, it means, yes, I believe that to be true. I believe it to be true. I suspected that around. Now you are confirming it to me. I suspected that. Now you're confirming it. Thank you very much. And we all know how those conversations continue. When we hear something being said and somebody is telling us something, we have that opportunity to force the person to take ownership of it. Question them. Is it true? You have evidence of that? Who did you hear that from? Most times when people want to gossip about people and carry news and bring up speculations about other people, they don't want to be tested. Because speaking about people, especially negatively when they are not there to defend themselves, quite frankly, is the lowest form of conversation. It doesn't take any effort to do, and it destroys relationships. So when we hear something from somebody, we have a responsibility to verify it. Don't jump to conclusions and just go down however the river washes us. We have a responsibility. There is nothing that disintegrates the Vaishnava community more than that. And this is demonstrated in this conversation. Therefore, we should ask for evidence. We should get it verified before coming to conclusions. And the lesson from that is when we hear somebody speaking about somebody, we should speak to the person. Speak to people rather than about people. We hear something, go to them. I heard this, is it true? Or even the person who is telling us, did you confirm that that was true? What you are saying? You have evidence to support that? Who you heard that from? 9 out of 10 times, that conversation would stop dead in the water. And they would look for another receptive ear. I've seen it happen. I've seen it happen. And therefore, because Kaikeyi didn't make any effort to verify the veracity of Manthara's claims, then this seed of doubt was planted by Manthara into the fertile soil of Kaikeyi's consciousness. The other side, how Kaikeyi reacted to hearing these pronouncements of Manthara, was she accepted it. And when she went to Bharat, to Dasharat, and asked for the boons, she was convinced, beyond any reasonable doubt, she was completely convinced that she was acting wholly and solely for Bharat's benefit. Is it? She was completely convinced that yes, this is what Bharat wanted. This would serve the interests of my son. She was convinced that Bharat was supposed to be king. And that Bharat would want to be king. Even though by the laws of that time, by the tradition of that time, Bharat had no claim. He had no claim. The oldest son was Ram. So even if Dasharatha waited, Ram still had the first claim for the throne, not Bharat. But she became convinced by Manthara that this conspiracy was true, and the course of action that she was taking was in complete defense of Bharat. You know what happened? She constructed this false Bharat within her consciousness. You know, Chaitanya Charan writes about this. I find it to be such a beautiful concept. So in the previous point, talk to people rather than about people. But when you want to do something for another person, also talk to them. And verify that this is what they actually want. Because when Bharat came and saw what happened, he was completely taken aback. Never accepted what his mother did. Didn't accept it for one moment. And in fact, he very severely chastised his mother. He said, Valmiki Muni writes that he saw his mother. He said, "You are not a goddess of fortune. You are an incarnation of the goddess Kali. And you have simply appeared here for the destruction of this dynasty of Raghu." This is what Bharat told his mother. "You have come here for the purpose of the complete and utter annihilation of our entire dynasty." Bharat didn't accept it. When we seek to help other people, we should find if that is what they really want. Sometimes we have this idea in our head that we know what is best for everybody else. But talk to them, find out if that is what they really want at this point in time. Find out. Speak to people. Find out what are their needs. And if this course of action we are taking will be in fulfillment of those needs. One of the things that facilitates the growth and maintenance of good, strong, solid relationships is effective communication. Not just communication, talking to people, but effective communication. Taking the time to say the right thing in the right way. It takes some effort. Because sometimes we run the risk of constructing an imaginary image of that person we want to please. And when we actually go to the person after we put all the effort in, realize that it's completely not what they wanted. Because we didn't take time to verify. This is what I want to do. Is this what you want? Is that okay? No. So the verification of speech. You're not jumping to conclusion. And we see even when Dasharatha, he took counsel. He had this idea in his mind, completely opposite to Kaikeyi. This is what I want to do. This is what I'm feeling. I'm seeing these signs. He didn't just say, I see a sign. Let me just act. Forget anybody else. No. He took time to get counsel. He spoke to his elders. He spoke to other people, not just his guru, but the people of the court, the brahmanas, the other dignitaries who would sit with him. And he questioned them, "This is what I want to do." And they said yes, they agreed. Kaikeyi did nothing of that, completely opposite. And caused complete and utter devastation in Ayodhya. Complete and utter devastation. Ultimately, it led to the devastation of Dasharatha. He died soon after Ram's departure. He died. He did not even get the blessing of having his most beloved son perform his last rites. Of course, the reason for that is another story. But he did not even get that blessing, that Ram would be the one to touch fire to his lips in the performance of the funeral rites. He departed this world completely and utterly dejected in separation from Ram. And Bharat, on the other hand, Ram encouraged him, "You should take the kingdom." But half the people, more than half the people in Ayodhya didn't believe what he was saying, that he had no hand in this. Can you imagine that? You have to rule the kingdom. Majority of the people feel you are lying, and they're always watching you skeptically. Any decision you make, something suspicious. And half the people believe him sort of slightly. So we'll give him the benefit of the doubt, but we'll still be a little cautious. And he had to rule under those kind of circumstances. Now, you know how difficult that must have been for him? There's another allegorical meaning we can take from this cautionary tale of the conversation between Manthara and Kaikeyi. We can think of Ayodhya as our hearts. And Manthara is the uncontrolled mind. And Kaikeyi is us. So Ayodhya is our hearts, Manthara is our uncontrolled mind, and Kaikeyi is us. So what is the lesson? When we allow the mind to poison us without higher understanding and verification, the result is Ram will be banished from our hearts. We banish Ram from our hearts. So with those words, those thoughts, I would stop. We have a few more minutes. If anybody would like to ask a question, to make a comment, to add something, to even offer some correction, that is very welcome also. Yes, Prabhu.
Generally, you were saying that about forcing or listening to verify. But most of the circumstances, the person who they may be listening to, they see them in a certain light because maybe a position, status, relationship, that they would not lie to them or they would not give them unverified information. So they would accept that as maybe the truth and do not verify and kind of go with it.
That's a bit kind of lazy, you know. Because especially if somebody's saying something that is, completely off. Like, I'll just use Mahaprabhu as an example. Don't mind, right? This is no truth to this. I'm just making this up as I go along. Somebody comes and says, Prabhu, he did such and such and such and such. And the person telling you this, you feel they are a trusted person. But what they are saying about Mahaprabhu is something completely off. Mahaprabhu is also a trusted person, isn't it? He's a person of responsibility. You don't think it's something you should verify?
What I'm trying to get at is that sometimes it may not seem as something off because of that person may have some influence. A lot of respect might be for that person. So, and the person listening, may think that there's no need for verification. Even though they should be.
Yeah.
They may think that because it is coming from this source,
it must be true. So then, if it turns out in that one incident, you give them the benefit of the doubt once. If it turns out to be wrong, what you have to do next time? Verify. If you still take them as a trusted source after that, the fault is with you, not with them. The first time we could give in, because they've proven themselves to be trustworthy in the past. But if they come with something that proves to be that you can't verify it, then what do you have to do? If you trust them a second time. Because even if and verification is not distrust on our part, If we want to verify something that somebody does, not distrust on our part. Because they're not holding us into something confidential, that we're breaking trust. Because the same way that they would have heard something, it means that it's already out in the open. How many times somebody would have told us something and they said, don't tell anybody, I'm just telling you. Not so? But they might tell about 3 people that. I'm just telling you, I'm just telling you, I'm just telling you. And then we now might get that and think, well, this is my good friend, let me tell him. He wouldn't tell anybody. And you tell them, no, I'm just telling you, don't tell anybody. Yeah? So after about, let me be real. Sometimes in the Hare Krishna community, after about 15 minutes, everybody knows. And everybody thinks nobody else knows. But everybody's speaking about it. And everybody's surprised when they hear it from somebody else. How we know? Because somebody told somebody who told them not to tell, and that was a signal for them to tell. It happens, unfortunately. It happens, unfortunately. So I think, more importantly, we have a responsibility to verify. I tend to err on that side. Even if I hear anybody tell me anything, I say, my default setting is I have to verify. That's my default setting.
And then regardless of who gives it information.
Regardless of who. Regardless of who. I always verify. But generally with me, like anybody who knows me over the years, like even if you tell me something, that's probably going to die with me. I don't have time to talk about it. You know what I mean? Especially if it's about somebody else or something. Especially if the person is not my friend, like I don't have a close relationship with the person. I don't feel the need to kind of make it any worse. Because even if something is true, right, the other side of it, if something is true, somebody going through a very difficult situation, like a bad relationship situation or something like that, that could lead to a very, bad result. And somebody tells you, if I talk about that, would that help that situation? Anybody who knows going through any kind of situation, it is already difficult. It's like hell. Going through a bad relationship situation, right? So me talking about it, is that making it more, is that helping the person with their burden or making it worse? Is adding more. Because what happens? Then they have to contend not with with demons that may be going through their own head and heart, dealing with the situation. They have to deal with the perception that everybody else is formulating against them. Who is right? Who is wrong? So who is the actual friend who is lending a hand? I mean, all this thing comes out of this simple interaction between Kaikeyi and Manthara. Kaikeyi could have gone to Dasharat. I heard this. Now, she felt Manthara was a trusted friend and advisor, isn't it? And when she tried to protest, Manthara convinced her otherwise. So, especially when something is going completely uncharacteristic to a person's normal behavior. All of a sudden, Ram and Bharat and all of them living so closely and lovingly together their entire life. All of a sudden, Ram will kill Bharat. Just like that. Especially if something seems extreme, it is more imperative for us to get that verified. Over the years, like my default setting is to verify. And quite honestly, that actually cost me some relationships along the way, wanting to verify. And most of those relationships have become mended over time. One person actually told me, they came with something like a very nasty thing about another devotee. And they came to me and they said, so and so and so. I said, like going to that person, They said, oh, you go to the person, then this person would know I told you. You know why he was upset? Because the person told him not to tell anybody. You understand? The person told me. So I went to him, I said, listen, I am going to that person because if this comes out, it could be very problematic for the community. I have to go out like this. And I went out and, that led to another foolish thing happen on the part of the person I went to. But he said, I can't tell you anything again. I said, well, if you come out with something like that to tell me, then better not. Because I don't want any part of it. But it takes some time to develop like that. Because I've seen the problems it causes in relationships. I've seen the problems it causes in relationships. It's better to take a few minutes and verify. It's always better. Because the same way we would be speaking about somebody and somebody delighted in speaking about somebody else, then it's a good chance. What happened? The same person talking about us. It happens. It happens. And it is not nice. It disturbs the community. It disturbs the community. Just to say that again, my default is verify. And if you decide to give this person the benefit of the doubt and you realize it didn't work out that time, then the next time, verify. Verify. It's not the fun thing to do, but it's the necessary thing to do. So now it's just time for the arati now. Shishi Gauritai ki, Shishi Radha Gopinath ki, Srila Prabhupada ki, Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai.
Gauranitai Jaya, Gauranitai Jaya, Gauranitai.